Over to you, Daren.
Thank you very much, John. Well, I just thought I'd take the opportunity to go through with people this afternoon a way that we can use Mote to make initially peer assessment, but also teacher assessment easier. And my initial focus was within languages. But if I just come back to my starting slide, actually, I'll kind of put an asterisk and then a double on there, because although the title's peer assessing spoken word in languages, of course, it can be any form of assessment. And of course, it doesn't have to be languages. And we maybe talk about that a little bit later on if we've got the opportunity. But I just wanted to make a start by really talking about why you might do that. Now, as a language teacher myself, as John said, I've been teaching for 23 years. One of the things I've found harder and harder as time's gone on is to be able to peer assess and teacher assess live in the classroom. And that's become more and more of a feature, particularly in the UK, but harder and harder to do. And I think one of the reasons for that is obviously the cognitive load. You've got so many things going on in the classroom. To actually devote your attention to listening to one individual student and then giving them quality feedback on what they've said is really, really tricky. Equally, you may, because of distractions, and those could be anything in a classroom, you may not hear what a student has said. And the number of times I've said to a student, can you just say that again for me? And I know for a fact the second time they've said something different to what they said the first time. And I've always thought to myself, it'd be great if I could just nip round and get recordings with no background noise of each individual student. And then I could listen to them back when I've got time to give the feedback, and they can listen to it back as well. Because, of course, they very rarely get to hear themselves speaking in that language. So it's one of those things that I think can be really, really useful. It can be great for peer assessment as well. Students always find language peer assessment tricky because, of course, they might be peer assessing a classmate who uses some language that they don't actually know, because that's the beauty of language, right? So if they don't know it, how do they assess it? And sometimes they won't recognize it if it's just spoken, because they won't be able to think about, okay, well, what was the spelling of that? They might be able to, but again, it makes it trickier. So having all of these things kind of recorded using Mote is a really great way to be able to do that assessment at the time that suits you, allow the students to listen to that assessment that you've done or a colleague or a classmate has done at a time that suits them as many times as they like. And moting, I'm not sure if it's a verb. I'm sure it is. I'm not. John will put me right if it's not. It is now anyway. So moting makes asking the questions, answering the questions, and assessing those questions much more accessible to absolutely everybody. And what we're going to do in this session is just go through how I go about doing that. It's not saying it's the only way to do it, but it's a way that works quite well with students and with other staff as well, because of course it also gives you the opportunity to moderate cross-department. So if I've got my students to record answers to questions, I can then share that spreadsheet or share those responses through Mote with one of my colleagues and ask them easy for me to say, ask them to mark it for me. And I can take all the names and everything out of that. So it's completely anonymized and it's completely unbiased. So how do we do that? And you'll be pleased to know this is it in terms of slides. That's it. It's just these two. We're going to use Google Forms. We're going to use Google Sheets. And of course, we're going to use Mote. Okay. And it's as simple as that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go straight into Google Forms. And in this case, I'm just going to start a blank form and I'm going to go through this step by step, exactly as we would do it if we were setting this up as a teacher. So I'm just going to click on Google Forms to start a blank form. And I'm going to call this one end of unit assessment. There we go. And in the form description, I'm just going to say here, listen to the question and respond using Mote. Simple as that. And then my first question, I'm just going to put in the title or the theme that the question is going to be about. So in this case, It's going to be a Spanish one, and it's going to be ratos libres. Okay. And you'll see one of the brilliant things about Google Forms as well is it's noticed immediately that I'm writing in Spanish, and it's suggested my answers potentially might be drop-down options in Spanish. Now, I don't want that, but it gives me that option. So what I want is a short answer. Okay. But before I do that, I want to record the question into there. So let's go to, actually, let's just take that out. Here we go. I'm going to go to Mote. I'm going to click record. Háblame de tus ratos libres, lo que te gusta hacer en tu tiempo libre y las cosas que no te gustan tanto. So I've recorded my question in there that I want the students to listen to. It comes up initially as the hyperlink, which also appears within your Mote activity dashboard and everything else. So it's sitting here now, 20th of August. I can go in and I can edit that. So I'm going to call this one Ratos Libres. So the title of it matches the question. Now it's done its best at creating the transcript for me. I don't actually want too much of a transcript in there for this case because I want the students to actively listen and try to interpret the question themselves. So all I'm going to do is just change that slightly to the start of the question. Háblame de tus ratos libres, and then just add an ellipsis in there. So
Daren, sorry to interrupt you in your flow, just to say, I think you might be showing window only, so we actually can't see you working this wonderful magic out. So I can temporarily remove your screen from the stream if you'd like, and then we can go ahead and do that.
Good point.
And you are getting some brilliant comments on your wonderful Spanish pronunciation there. So muy bien.
Right, let me just reshare.
Cheers, Daren. I think it's the green shirt. It's throwing everything.
Could well be. I've got this weird. There is no one behind me, by the way. There.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I don't quite know what that is. It is a little bit scary. Right, we should be better now, John.
Perfect. Okay. Cheers, then.
Okay, so let's just roll that back. So I've recorded my question there, and it's showing up as the hyperlink, but it will also show up in my activity dashboard and everything else within Mote. So if I go back to the extension and I click up here and I click, we can see I've got my Ratos Libres recorded on the 20th of August at 8:37. I went into the edit. It had a kind of attempt at a transcript, but I've just shortened it, like I said, because I wanted the students to try and understand the question for themselves. So that's all there that's ready to go. I'm also going to save it to my Mote book so that I can come back to that and I can use that anytime I like. And that's now there and ready. Now, if I go into the preview mode on this, I've made it a required question. If I was to share that straight away with the students, this is what students would see. So they'd get the Mote card. They'd be able to click and play it. They can only see the small part of the transcript, but they can click and play. Háblame de tus ratos libres, lo que te gusta hacer en tu tiempo libre y las cosas que no te gustan tanto. Okay, and they can respond by clicking record here and producing their answer. So I'm going to do that really quickly, just so that we've got an example to go by. So I'm going to pretend that I'm a student and I'm going to make a student style response to this. En mi tiempo libre me gusta jugar al fútbol en el parque con mis amigos. Me gusta mucho el fútbol porque es divertido. No me gusta nada la natación. Es un rollo. And I'm just going to leave it there. Okay. Now, if I was a student and I was trying to peer assess that, there might well be language that's been used there that I wouldn't recognize myself, because it might be something that the students researched independently. But here we're just going to click submit. The student could go in and check the transcript and edit that if they wanted to, I'm not fussed about that particularly. I just want to listen to them. So we're going to click submit. Okay, and the students here, you can see you've got the option to submit another response. We'll come back to why that might be a little bit later on. So I'm just going to close that window, and we can see now I've got my one response in my form, which I should have titled, by the way. There we go. So I'm going to click on the responses. It shows it here, and it shows in the responses, it gives you the link. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to open a spreadsheet with it. And that's the bit that the assessment and the peer assessment and the moderation really get involved in. So I'm going to create the spreadsheet. I'm going to call it end of unit assessment there. And that's now opening itself up. And we can see we've got a timestamp and we've got then the Mote link there. Okay. Now I might have collected students' names. I might have collected their email address. It's entirely up to me what I collect at the time. But now you can see it previews as a card. It's really easy for me to just hover over that and say, right, I want to listen to that recording now. En mi tiempo libre me gusta jugar al fútbol. Okay, so we know that we've got that link in there. I can listen to it as many times as I like. I can play it back. I can copy it. I can do whatever I want. I can even go in and I can edit it myself because I've got the edit rights because I recorded it. But there's loads of things I can do with that now. So I can download that. I can create or ask the students to create an MP3 file. I could even put all these together into a mini podcast. If I get 12 students all recording answers to different questions, I can pull them all together into a mini podcast that then the whole class can listen back to. But the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to upgrade this spreadsheet. So in another spreadsheet, I've already created kind of the things that I want to be included. So I'm just going to copy and paste those. You can see I've got some data validation going on in here. I've got a total going on. I'm asking for a PA name here and also some feedback. I've got the very, very simple generic rubric. And of course, you can use any rubric you like for both content and communication. So the students are clear what they need to do. And I've also got the information here around peer assessment. So I'm going to drop into here and I'm just going to copy and paste all of that information in. There we go. Now, because we've copied and pasted, that data validation hasn't pulled through. It's entirely up to you whether you want it to or not, but it's very easy to do. So I'm just going to show you how we do that. We go to data and validation. And all I'm going to do is choose from a list of items, and they are going to be either 0, 1, or 2. Okay, so those are the only options that are available there. And if I choose a 2 for content, we can see it updates the total column. If I choose a 1 for communication, it does the same again. Okay, so there's no way that we can choose the wrong scores. And if we want to clear them all together, we can just take them out. So each response is going to fall into a different row in this column. If we've collected names, we're going to know exactly who's done them. And then we're going to ask either students or colleagues or ourselves to listen to each one, score it on content and communication, give them a total, tell them who's responded or who's assessed them, and also give them some feedback as well. The other thing I might do before I do this, I'm just going to stretch that a little bit. There we go, because there's a horrible spelling mistake in there, which I've just spotted, and I hate. So we're just going to go with this one. There we go, and spring that over slightly. There we go. And I'm just going to screenshot just that information. And obviously it's slightly off screen there, but you get the idea. Because what actually I might want to do is to put that in to my form. So I'm going to add an image to my form by doing an upload. And that is going to be that screenshot that I've just taken. So that when students open up the form, the first thing that they see is the rubric that they need to follow. Okay, don't need to answer anything around it, but they've got the clear, this is what the expectations are. Okay, then they hear the question, then they answer the question and submit. So back in our end of unit assessment, here we go. We've got the timestamp so we know when it was done. We might potentially have the student's email address or their name. we've got their link, and then we can go through and we can listen again. So we know what the question was. This particular question was about their spare time. What do they like to do and what don't they like to do? So we're going to listen to this back again. En mi tiempo libre me gusta jugar al fútbol en el parque con mis amigos. Me gusta mucho el fútbol porque es divertido. No me gusta nada la natación. Es un rollo. Okay, so we've listened to the whole thing. Much like tends to happen around May every year, just before the speaking exams start, is that everybody goes to play football in the park with their friends. So we might have expected that one. And we did talk about what we like doing and what we don't like doing. So we're going to give full marks for content there. Bearing in mind, students can be doing this at any level whatsoever. It could be a simple one question answer. It might be a longer piece of text. It really depends on the students you're working with and the age of those students and their command of the language. Communication-wise, everything communicated there. So we're going to give them a total of 4. I'm going to say that I peer assessed it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them some feedback by recording a Mote for them. So again, I'm just going to click up here. I'm going to click record. Really great piece of work. You communicated everything really clearly. The accent was good. You just need to work on the pace and the fluency of your conversation. I like the fact that you included an idiomatic expression in there right at the end with un rollo. So we're just going to take that. We've got everything we need there. So we can click to share it. This time I'm just going to grab the link and I'm just going to copy it into there. And then I can share that back with students, and I might protect the other cells so that the students can't change anything, but they can go back and they can listen to their feedback. Or I might just record that and send it to them by email. But it gives everybody the option of seeing everything in one place. And like I say, from a peer assessment or from a moderation point of view, really helpful. So the way I do it with peer assessing is quite simply, I would get all the students to record, and then quite simply, as they drop in, I would say, find your name, and then peer assess the next response below you in the list. Okay. And then whoever's at the bottom goes back to the top and then work from there. And anything that doesn't get picked up, sometimes you get the odd anomaly where the person below them has already been picked off by somebody else. Because you're recording who's doing it, you should see if anyone's doubled up. But if you've got anyone that finished adding really quickly, then you should be able to say to them, look, can you pick up number 6 for us? Can you also respond to that one? So it gives us the opportunity to be able to do that peer assessment. But if it's moderation, this might actually be recorded as, I can see you've given this 4 marks. However, I don't think there's quite enough information communicated there to be able to give that the full 4 marks. I think it's probably a 3-mark answer. So you can leave feedback for each other and for colleagues as well, across a department, across a school, or even wider across a district. Okay. So that's pretty much the basics behind it. But of course, this isn't just useful for modern languages. Any teaching aspect where you've got an element of spoken response, where you've got speaking and listening, and you want students to explain their thinking, you can do exactly the same thing. As long as they know what their rubric is, what they're working to communicate, and they've got the means by which to communicate it, they can do those things really, really easily. And of course, the other option you've got is if you want to make this more of a student choice board kind of affair, and my good friend Stephanie Howe is a great advocate of choice boards. One of the things you could do with this, of course, is turn it into a branching form. So if you've got your rubric in there, what you could say is add in a question here, which is choose your topic to respond to. Okay. And we make that a drop down option here. Oops. Here we go. So we might have ratos libres. We might have salud. We might have educación, and so on. Okay, and they might have to choose from various different ones. Once we've done that, if we create sections, we can then create this branching form. So I'm going to add a section in. So we choose there. I've got this one. This is going to be Ratos Libres section. Okay. And then we do the same for the others. So we'd add in another section. Oops. Just drag that back up, put it in the right one. There we go. So section 2, Ratos Libres. Section 3, then would be Salud. And they'd have an answer in there. And then we'd have section 4, which would be Educación. And we can record a different question for each one. And then up at the top here, where we've got our branching aspect, we can use the more menu here to say, go to section based on answer. So if they choose to say Ratos Libres, they're going to go to section 2. If they choose to talk about Salud, they're going to go to section 3. And if they choose to talk about Educación, they're going to go to section 4. And one of the key things to remember is at the end of each section, then just make sure that it goes directly to submit to form. Otherwise, you end up with people having to work all the way through. And if we go through and look at that now as a student, I can say, right, I'd like to go to Ratos Libres, click next. It's going to take me to the Ratos Libres question. Or I can go back. I can choose to go to Educación, click next. And this time it would take me to the education section. And then from there, I can record my response. And in that way, you can have students having the ability to answer any particular questions that you might want, but the ability to not only practice speaking, to be able to listen to themselves back, to be able to listen to each other, and for you to be able to give them good quality, impactful, powerful feedback without any other distractions. And apart from anything else, the students really, really enjoy that. And they love having the opportunity to just play back them talking to their friends and things like that, and the parents, particularly when they've had positive feedback. So that's it. That's one way of using Mote to be able to not just peer assess, but also teacher assess and moderate across, in this case, languages, but actually any other subject at all.